Okay, so our lab environment for 70-742 we're going to need to set up. Now, each one of you probably already clicked it. I'm going to click activate and make my 70-742 live. I'm going to wait just a moment for that screen to refresh and give me the green background. When it does, we're going to click on for our LUN-DC1. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to wait for my screen to refresh again, showing me it has been turned on. I'm going to go ahead and subsequently do the same for LUN SVR1. We'll wait for the screen to refresh once more, and I'll do the same for LUN-SVR2. This will run the setup routine for each one of my three servers. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the LUN DC1 console so I can see the progression. As I can see, it's already beginning to set itself up, and we should be able to enter our lab environment very shortly and configure our three servers. We'll be using just those three servers, and for example, lab 2 only works with DC1. However, we'll be using server 1 and server 2 throughout the labs. We're going to configure those three. We'll be installing Active Directory direct domain services on DC1. We'll also be installing DHCP as well as, of course, DNS, which we have to have. And we're also going to do the certificate authority installation once more. So in addition to that, we also need to create a couple user accounts to have right out of the bat. They'll be using those in working with our different labs. There's actually 4 different user accounts that we're going to create, and we're also going to create a few different organizational units and groups, universal security groups. Remember, security groups are not all the same. There's different ones. We're going to be creating universal security groups in this case. So we should be, it's taking a little bit longer because we're setting all these labs up at the same, or all these servers rather, up at the same time. So I'm just going to pause the video while that setup finishes. Okay, well, it looks like it's soon going to give me a logon prompt. And one thing to keep in mind is the fact that, yes, we're going to be setting up those groups. We're going to be setting up user accounts. Um, You can refer back to our previous setup in your Hyper-V network setup instructions. If you remember, there's a link to that in the D2L as well, in case you don't have your printed copy that I provided all the students at the beginning of the sessions. Refer back to that so that you have your IP address and domain, your subnet, your DNS, DHCP settings, or you can simply watch me do it all. The certificate setup, certificate authority setup is going to be the same as what we did in 7041. I'm sorry, 70-741. DNS will be the same. Our domain is going to be set up the same. Our DHCP is going to be set up the same. What's going to be different is the addition of those organizational units, the universal security groups, and some accounts that we're going to create. So let's go ahead and let's get in here. Let's get going. I've got my logon prompt, and we're using that capital PA11WORD as our password. Let's roll. Let's see if we aren't committing some of these things to memory by now. This should be starting to get to be old hat, so to speak. Wonder where that phrase even came from. Old hat for you. Everyone should know exactly what they're doing by now. That's the goal, right? Take these skills, do them so many times that they become second nature, that you sit down for the interview or you sit down in that role, that job that you've gotten in IT, and you know exactly what they're asking of you. Okay, so our desktop's coming up. I'm going to jump over and just kind of get an idea where server 1's at, It's already got me a logon prompt, server 2 also, so they're ready to go once we get our domain set up, that we'll be able to assign IP addresses and do our rename and domain join all in one, those two in one step. Remember, you can set your static IP, you can do your domain join and your rename at the same time. Okay, so here comes Server Manager. It's the first time we've turned these on, so it takes a few more moments than it would normally. Just remember, when you're doing these server functions, when you're doing networking, don't be in a hurry. Take your time, think it through thoroughly, do it once, do it right. So what's the first thing we got to do? We need to set IP address, and we need to rename this. Now you'll notice we've got two Ethernet adapters. One is for our private network. Let's just jump back over to our lab environment, take a look so that you understand what we got there. We've got our private network adapter, and we've got an iSCSI storage network adapter. So jumping back over to my DC1, more than one page. Okay, there you go. Another page. Any more? Okay, that's it. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to click on Ethernet. This should be my first adapter. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to rename that. What are we going to rename it? We're going to name it private network. I'm going to hit tab, go iSCSI storage network. Make it easy on yourself. Be able to identify these things without even having to drill into them. Our IPv4 address, 172.16.0.10. And we're going to do this as a class C, so 255. And we can set a gateway even though we're not going to be using one. We're going to be pointing to ourself for DNS even though it's not installed yet. I'm going to click OK, I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to provision the iStorage IP address right now as well. And let's see, that is going to be, what's our iSCSI? Actually, we don't even have an address right now. You know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to leave that the way it is for now. Let's worry about what we got to do to get this set up. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click on there. We're going to go and we're going to rename this LUN-DC1, and I'm going to go ahead and get that restarted. Yeah, we know that. We've seen this countless times, right? Going to restart. I'm waiting for that to come up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get logged on to here, onto our two other servers, so we're ready to roll in what we got to do there. Why wait? Same password, of course. Okay, back to DC1. We should be able to log on by now. Yep, we can. So we got our name. Computer name has been named. IP address has been set. So we've got a static IP address. We've got the name that we want it to be. We're ready to start installing roles on here. All we got to do is wait for Server Manager to fully load, because remember, you got to wait for Server Manager to fully load before you can start adding roles, because it wants to know that everything's stable. If I click on it right now, it's going to give me in fact, let's do that. See if it'll even let me. Nope, it already completed. Okay, so we're good to go. Let's go ahead. We're going to do add. We're going to do next, next, next. And we're going to select Active Directory Domain Services and add the features. We're going to do DNS and we're going to add features. We're going to do DHCP and add features. We are not going to do certificate services yet because remember we're going to do that as an enterprise CA. We have to have our domain established before we can do that. Those three, click next, click next, click next, click next, click next, click install. Once our feature installation is done, then we can promote this to being a domain controller. You know what? While I'm waiting for this to complete, I'm going to jump back over to server 1 and I'm going to set its IP address. Like I said, why wait? Don't be in a hurry to do things, but also take efficient use of your time. Private network, iSCSI storage network. Let's go ahead and right click, go to properties. What's the IP address for server 1? Well, we know it's 172.16.0 something, right? It is .21. And we want to be on that same Class C subnet. And we'll go ahead and put the fictitious gateway in. And it's going to point to our domain controller for its DNS once the domain controller is set up. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. That way when we go to do our domain join, it'll see that. It'll already be there. So I'm going to click OK. If we look, it's trying to identify, but the DNS doesn't exist yet. But the settings are all there, okay? So I can close that out, maximize Server Manager so it's nice and easy to work with. I'm going to come over here, we'll do that first. Local server. Click here. I'm going to right click and rename. Private network. And then on my Ethernet 2, iSCSI storage network. I'm going to right click on the private. So make sure you've got Ethernet, you've got Ethernet 2. Ethernet gets renamed private network. Ethernet 2 gets renamed iSCSI storage network. And you can see that right here. Ethernet adapter 2. Go properties. And our server 2 gets IP address. That's correct, 172.16.0.22. Same fictitious gateway. And point to where our DNS will be. .10. Our DNS is on our domain controller. We should have that embedded in our minds by now. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. We should see those settings. Yep, there they are. Back to our DC1. And we are ready to promote it to a domain controller. So let's go ahead. We're going to add a new forest. It's our first domain controller and our first domain. And it's a datum.com. Press enter or click next. It's going to take just a few moments. Now, if you didn't go ahead and set your static IPs, maybe while this is doing it, you could go over to server 1, server 2 and do that. It usually takes a minute or so. Got to wait for it to finish loading, checking everything, making sure there's not going to be conflicts with an existing domain name. Once this completes, we're going to enter in our same default password for our directory services restore mode password. That's how we get in here, by command, in case something goes wrong. Next. There's no DNS delegation next right now, right? Going to verify the datum netbios name. And there it is. Next. And we're going to specify the path. We've had this conversation a number of times. Next. Everything looks good. Click Next. It's going to verify that the prerequisites all exist. It should come back, give us a green check mark that we're ready to install. Should only take a moment. See, this is when the boss wants to, hey, what are you doing? Why are you just sitting there? And go, hey, I'm verifying prerequisites. This takes time. We can't speed things up. We can't hurry. We don't want to make mistakes. And you say, well, wait a minute. These labs usually run a lot faster than that. Well, it's 12 o'clock on a Friday. We may have a lot of other students that are accessing these things right now. Okay, all checks passed successfully. Let's go ahead and we'll start our installation. So now we're creating the domain partition. We're creating our Active Directory. You're going to see I've posted Lab 1, even though you're not going to be doing Lab 1. I've posted it for you to see. I replicated it in Hyper-V on my computer. If we're joining a second domain controller, and keep in mind that all domains should have at least 2 domain controllers. What happens if you only have 1 domain controller and it crashes? Nobody gets access to anything. When you add a second domain controller to an existing domain, it replicates, it copies the existing partition. And you'll see that those steps are a little different. The steps are, well, that's wrong. The steps are the same. But what you'll see here where it says configuring the local computer to host Active Directory, creating directory partition, well, you'll see it saying replicating. And you can see here there's 1,300 objects left to go, 800 objects left to go. Setting our policies, setting the domain name root to DNS root. That's what we see in DNS. So it doesn't just create the Active Directory partition, it's creating that link in DNS. And there's configuring the DNS server service. Making sure that that DNS server service is running every time that the computer starts up. Okay, and it just completed, and of course we're going to get signed out. It was successfully configured as a domain controller. Of course it's going to reboot, and as soon as it reboots, it's going to log back in, and it's going to start back up as a domain controller. And if you remember, that first time it starts back up, it takes a few more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you don't have to sit here and watch it just churn away. Okay, so we're up. Let's go ahead and get logged in. And we're now going to log in as domain administrator. Okay, let's go ahead and first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our reverse DNS. Because we want to be able to resolve names as well as resolve IP addresses, right? Select your domain, expand, select reverse lookup, right click, new zone, next, 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 172.16.0. Enter, enter, finish. Reverse lookup's done. Select the forward looking zone, select the datum, double click on DC1, check update associated pointer, click OK, go back to your reverse lookup zone. There it is. It's already there. Done with DNS. Let's authorize and complete our DHCP configuration. We're going to say next. This is to authorize it. Commit. Creates security groups, authorizes it. Okay, so let's go to Tools, DHCP. Gonna make it a little bit larger to work with. Move my center divider over. Select the server, select IPv4, right click, new scope, next. We're going to name it a datum. Next, starting IP address is going to be 172.16.0.160. End address 172.16.0.190. Need to change the length to 24 bits. Click next. No exclusions. Just click next. Click next. Say yes I do. Click next. We'll put in that fictitious router. We're going to click add. We're going to click next. It already knows about our domain, but that's wrong. Let's remove that. We need to change that to 172.16.0.10. I need to go over and look what happened. Probably because of that iSCSI adapter. I'm going to click add. We're going to click next. We're going to click next. We're going to activate it. We're going to finish it. So if I look over here under all local server, this one's getting an APIP address because there's nothing to assign it. So I'm going to, for now, let's go ahead and I'm going to disable that just to make sure there's no conflicts. Now it's the only one that shows up. Back over on DHCP, I can look. We take a look at our scope options. Everything's fine. Go ahead and close that. DHCP set up. Let's jump over to server 1 and server 2. We're going to get them joined. So they have their addresses. Let's do the same thing. Let's disable that iSCSI for now. I'm going to click workgroup. I'm going to click change. This is server 1, LUN SVR1. We're going to make it part of the adatum.com domain. There's our prompt, administrator, and we use our default password. Should get our welcome to. Yep, there it is. It's going to tell us we got to restart. Of course we do. We click close, restart. While that's restarting, I'm going to jump over to server 2. We're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to click on iSCSI address. We're going to right click on it. We're going to disable. I'm going to close that. I'm going to click on workgroup. Click on change. We're going to rename it LUN-SVR2. And you'll notice that we're already up to about 25 or mid-20s in minutes. I'm doing this entire video. No part 1, no part 2. We're just going to do it right start to finish. Domain's a datum. Administrator. Of course, our password. We'll get the welcome to. Going to tell us we have to restart. We're going to click close and then restart now. So they can restart. We don't need to do anything with them right now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to DC1. We're going to add certificate services. So next, 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 and Active Directory certificate services. We're going to add those features. We're going to click next. We're going to, under features, we're going to click next. After we selected our certificate server, right? Okay, next. We're going to do certificate authority. We're also going to do web enrollment. We need to add those features. Going to click next. We're going to click next. We're going to click next. And we're going to install. Okay, and we're finished. So we're going to select Configure Certificate Services. This is our administrator account. We click Next. We're going to configure these two roles. It is going to be an enterprise CA. That's why we had to wait until we had our domain set up. This will be our first CA, so it's a root CA. We're going to create a new key. We're going to accept those settings for our cryptographic provider and hash length algorithm. We're going to leave the common name for the CA the way it is. We're going to let it be 5 years. Database is fine. We're going to accept the defaults. We're going to click Configure. Should be done. Yep, yeah, I was just going to say should be done in a moment. Okay, so now we're going to close. We're going to go Tools, Certificate Authority. We're going to expand a datum. We're going to select Certificate Templates. We're going to right click and we're going to select Manage. We're going to first select Domain Controller. And we're going to right click and we're going to say Duplicate or Duplicate Template. We're going to click on General and we're going to change Copy Of to a datum. And click OK. We're going to right click on Web Server and Duplicate Template. We're going to select General and we're going to change Copy Of to a datum and click OK. We have our two custom certificates. Now, before we do anything else, we need to right click on the web server and go to Properties. And we want to go to the Security tab. And for authenticated users, we also want to select Write and Enroll. This will allow authenticated users to request a web template, web server template certificate. Let's see, I think that's all of our settings there. Yes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. Now we're going to go ahead and close the templates console. We're going to right click on certificate templates. We're going to say New Certificate Template to Issue. It's going to take just a moment to read our templates. And should come up here in just a second. And there they are. We're going to select the domain controller. I'm going to hold my control button on my keyboard, and that allows me to select multiple templates. Click OK. And there's our 2 templates that we created. So we can go ahead and we can close the certificate authority. Let's make sure it works. I'm going to go run MMC. I'm going to add my certificates. We're going to say all, and we're going to do it for the computer account. Next, finish, OK. I'm going to expand, I'm going to select personal. We've already got this certificate. That's for our domain controller. We want to request a new certificate. All tasks, right click, all tasks, request new certificate. We go next, next. Going to take a moment, it's reading what we can do. Okay, we want to get a web server certificate, but we need more information. So we're going to click More Info. We're going to change this first field, the subject name. We're going to change it from full DN to common name. And the value that we're going to type in for that will be the fully qualified domain name. So it's going to be lun-dc1.adatum.com. We're going to click Add. We're going to click the General tab, and we're going to type in that same friendly name. Just want to check back over here. Yep, adatum.com, lun-dc1, making sure everything's typed correctly. Now we don't have a warning here anymore, so I can click and roll. Put the checkbox and click and roll. It's contacting the certificate authority, certification authority. And we have gotten our web certificate. Click Finish, and there it is. And there's that certificate template. We are done. We're ready to begin our labs. Are we? No, not quite yet. Not quite yet. We still have some organizational unit work to do, and we've got some work to do on user accounts. So I'm going to go to Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers. We need to create 6 organizational units. I'm going to open up there. I'm going to do Right. I'm going to do New Organizational Unit. And the first one's going to be called Executive. Press Enter. Okay. Right-click at Datum, New Organizational Unit, IT, Enter. Right-click, New Organizational Unit, Managers. Right-click, New Organizational Unit, Production. Right-click, you get the idea, New Organizational Unit, Research. And one more, New Organizational Unit, Sales. Now, in each one of these, we need to create universal security groups. So we're going to do Right, New, Group. We need to select Universal, and we're going to call it Sales. And I'm going to press Enter. So there's our sales security group. We're going to do the same thing for the rest of our organizational units that we created. group. This one is research. Need to change it to universal. Click OK. Go to production, new, group. Production, change it to universal. Click OK. Managers, new, group. Change it to universal. IT, same thing. And finally executive and new group. And make sure you change it to universal. Okay. So we've created those organizational units. We then created our universal security groups with the same names in the corresponding OUs. Okay. Now we need to add user accounts. In the IT, we want to create a new user account. And that IT user is going to be Beth Burke. So logon name is going to be BBURKE, B Burke. Password is going to be the same password we've been using all along. And since it's test lab, we're not going to require them to change, and the password's not going to expire. Next, and finish. Okay, now we need to go to the managers. We're going to go new, user, and that user is going to be Adam Hobbs. So HOAHOBBS for the username. Same password. Get rid of the change of logon. Make it non-expire. Make it not expire. Finish. Okay, 2 down. In our sales, we're going to create 2 users. The first one is going to be Lakeisha Dennis. Here's one, new, and user. And this user is going to be Abby Parsons. So username is A Parsons. Same thing. Password. Non-expiring. Doesn't expire. Doesn't have to change it. Okay. Our domain is set up. Our DNS is set up. Our DHCP is set up. Our certification authority is set up. Our organizational units have been created. Our security groups and our users. That completes your lab setup. You are done. Thank you.